Hi, this is Siddharth Aluwalia and I'm today with Glen Svensson. Glen has been meditating for the last 25 years and is a very well-known, renowned meditation teacher all throughout the world. He teaches meditation, especially courses in uh, attention building throughout India, Australia, Italy and USA. Welcome Glen to our podcast.
Thank you, Siddharth.
Glen, our listeners would like to know more about your journey.
My journey. Well, when I was in my upbringing, my family was sort of a Christian family. But then in my teenage years, some of the things in Christianity didn't really make much sense to me. So I sort of abandoned that. And then as many young people these days, I pursued the career path. So I studied at university. I had a Bachelor of Science in IT. And then I was working in IT for a short time in Australia. And then I managed to find a job in IT in Switzerland. And of course, at that time, working in Switzerland, I was earning a lot of money. I was driving a BMW. I was leading the high life, eating at nice restaurants, going skiing on the weekend and so forth. And this is something that I think many people aspire to and never really achieve in their entire life. But I was very fortunate that almost overnight I found myself in this situation. And of course, for a year or 18 months, it was a lot of fun and pleasure. But then after about 18 months of this, I really thought, wow, is this all that life has to offer? Some little bit of pleasure? And then I really became completely depressed about that. And so, and then I struggled on for another 2 years in Switzerland. But then eventually I thought, no, that I have to do something. I have to change something. I have to look for some more meaning in my life. And that's really what sort of kick-started my journey. Although it did take a number of years after that until I really found myself here in actually Tashita Meditation Center in Dharamsala, where we are now, where I managed to attend a 10-day course in Introduction to Buddhism. And when I attended this course, a lot of things just clicked for me. A lot of things made sense and a lot of things were actually what I was already thinking. So this sort of filled a lot of missing pieces in my puzzle. And so this is really where I first appreciated that there is more to life than simply making lots of money and having some sensory pleasures.
You mentioned about a period of struggle between leaving your job and attending that course at Tushita. What did you do during this period and how long was this period?
Yeah, when I left my IT job in Switzerland, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I had to look for something different, and I ended up back in Australia, and I knew I didn't want a desk job, and so actually I ended up becoming a dive instructor on the Barrier Reef. And that was good for me in that it was outdoors and actually it was teaching people to scuba dive. And so I enjoyed teaching, and I think I enjoy trying to help others. And so I was doing that, but that was not my direction I really wanted to go. That was just something to do while I was really looking for the deeper meaning in life. And it was during that period that I was doing quite a lot of traveling. And that's at the time where I ended up here in India at Tashita Meditation Center, and that's where I did my first course in Buddhism. And that's where a lot of things clicked. And then I followed that up with two of these well-known 1-month meditation courses at Kopan Monastery in Kathmandu. And so I did these, and then that really deepened my understanding and my aspiration to make my life meaningful. And that's when I went back to Australia and thought, okay, I really want to change the direction of my life. And so I wanted to meditate every day. I wanted to transform my life. I wanted to change my life. But the difficulty was that, of course, where I was in Australia, there was no one else interested in doing this. And of course, I tried to meditate each day, but you know, we all have very strong habits. and it's very hard to change those habits. So even though I really wanted to meditate every day and change my life, because there was no one around to help me, I just got swept away in my old habits. So basically for 2 years, nothing really changed in my life, even though I wanted to make that change. It was only after 2 years that I discovered this 7-year Buddhist studies program in Italy that started something. Because then I left where I was in Australia, I went to Italy, and I was living inside the Buddhist center. And there, of course, there's a lot of other people meditating and doing the things I wanted to do. So then it was a lot easier to begin meditation practice and to get supported and so forth. So that's what really helped me to begin my meditation practice, is this support network. So of course I'm not saying that everyone has to go and live in a Buddhist center. In fact, I don't think that's a good idea for most people. But what we need to do, I think, if we really want to change our life and to meditate regularly, we need help. We need to find other like-minded people who are trying to do something similar, and to get connected with them and to help each other, support each other, and meet together regularly. So of course in Buddhism this brings up the idea of Sangha, or spiritual community. And I really think that if we really want to meditate each day and really to change the direction of our life in a better direction, we need to find this Sangha. Because my experience in talking to many people, if we try to do it on our own, it's extremely difficult, if not impossible.
What were the initial challenges you faced when you started meditating?
So again, we have very strong habits. So even though I was in a Buddhist community and so forth, then of course our mind is full of craving and attachment for pleasurable things. And so focusing on the breath is not so exciting. And so our craving and attachment mind says, what are you doing? You know, I need something more stimulating, more interesting. So it was also always a struggle with this, is that my craving and attachment was trying to pull me out of that. But of course, like anything in our life, if we want to change something, it takes time. So we need to just be persistent, and the more persistent we are and the more we practice, the more things will improve and change.
What purpose kept you going through these challenges?
Again, I think what really helped was those initial courses I did here in Tashita and in Kopan, because that enabled me to see the bigger picture in life. What is really the true purpose of life? And the true purpose of life, of course, is not just to try and chase after lots of money and try and have some pleasurable experiences. But the true purpose, of course, is to strive for this genuine happiness, this inner well-being, and to really then benefit others. And of course, the gateway to that is meditation. So that's what really sort of kept me going and inspired me to meditate, because I could see that meditation was the doorway to that.
You had a lucrative career which many people aspire for. When you gave that up for meditation, didn't it feel like losing something?
No, not really, because all that career was really giving me was some money and then some little sensory pleasures. And very quickly that really doesn't satisfy anymore. So I didn't feel like I was giving up something. In fact, I felt like I was giving up a dysfunctional way of life.
There are 50 people who want to do a retreat for every person who is doing one. And these are not able to attend retreats because of many circumstances. What would be your advice to these people, how they can become regular meditators?
Well, as I mentioned already, I think that if we want to become regular meditators, we need help. We need to find other like-minded people in our community. And of course, if our partner, our husband or wife, then is also wanting to do that, then that's already something very good. But at least I think to find some like-minded people and get connected with them and meditate together. And I think here it's much better to get some direct guidance rather than just trying to pick it up from a book. So fortunately now with the improving of modern technology, then often a lot of these meditation retreats are streamed live. So even though maybe you can't physically go to the retreat place, you could actually in real time, you could follow the retreat at home. And often these are streamed not only audio but video as well. So you can really even get nearly even a sense of being actually in the retreat. So I think this is going to be very, very helpful. And if you can't watch it live, then a lot of these retreats are recorded. And so then you can use these sort of retreats as a basis for learning the practice. Because very often in these retreats, is not only is the teacher explaining the practice, but they're leading the guided meditation, but also often in these retreats there's a lot of Q&A from the people attending. So you can really get not only the instruction about the practice, you get to practice it, and also you get to listen to some common questions that you may also have yourself. So I think this can be a very, very good way to get into practice, is through either the live streaming or listening to a retreat, short retreat, and particularly then together with some other people, so that then when you can to continue that practice, you can support each other.
Who have been your teachers that you admire?
Well, within Buddhism, my first teacher was Geshe Jampa Gyatso, a Tibetan Lama, who was my teacher for the 7-year study program that I attended in Italy. And I think he was the first teacher that really had a big impact on me, because he was not only my teacher, but he also gave me a lot of personal guidance as well. After that time, then I was spending quite a lot of time in India, and I was very fortunate to be able to attend a lot of teachings from His Holiness Dalai Lama. And not only what I found his teachings very clear, but I also found him a very inspiring teacher, very inspiring person. So he also had a very big influence on me. Then more recently in India also, I was following another teacher, Mingyu Rinpoche, who was introducing me to a practice called Mahamudra, which is like a nature of the mind practice, which is really the practice that I resonate with a lot now. So he also had a lot of positive influence on me, and I continue to follow his guidance today. And then more recently, in the last few years, I've been connected with and following Alan Wallace, who he's also introducing me to a system of practice called Dzogchen, which is very similar to Mahamudra, also nature of the mind practice. So in fact, in the next couple of days here, he'll be coming here to Tashita and leading a retreat. I'm very much looking forward to that.
What is the purpose of your life?
The purpose of my life, I really think that the purpose of my life is serving others. I mean, I think I sort of intuitively understood that from quite an early age. But of course, our modern society is not really promoting that message. Unfortunately, our modern society is promoting the message that, you know, you're the most important, you need to sort of, you're number one, you need to make a lot of money and have a career and be well known and so forth. And so I think that really suffocated my sort of intuitive understanding about this from an early age. But I think since coming into Buddhism and really studying and meditating, I really can appreciate that, of course, we're all striving for genuine happiness, but really the expression of that is really serving others. And I think, you know, in terms of career, you know, often people talk about, you know, should I do the career thing or the spiritual thing? I think this is a wrong way of thinking, because, you know, for most of us, a career is what we require to have financial stability. But also, if it's the one thing we're good at and we give that up, then how are we going to benefit the world? So rather, my advice is to integrate those two and to really use your talents to benefit the world. Because I think that, you know, if we have this idea or this world view that the source of my happiness is coming from out there in the world, then I think no matter what career we have, even if we're really a CEO of a Fortune 500 company and earning millions of dollars a year, I think we're not going to be very happy. In fact, often we can be very miserable. Whereas if we have the worldview that really the source of happiness is coming from within, then I think any career we engage in, it can be very meaningful and rewarding, because it's more about what we can bring to the world rather than what we can get to the world. And I think really that the deepest satisfaction and happiness we get is from serving others. Because through serving others, we serve ourselves.
People who have difficult partners or parents, and those parents and partners do not understand meditation and are not supportive of the other person's meditative practice, how would you advise the person to go about this path?
I think that often if we are trying to follow meditation, we're trying to meditate, we're trying to make our life more meaningful, maybe even having a more spiritual sort of life, then I think we need to be a little bit careful in how we communicate with our family members and friends. Because often if they are very closed-minded, it's probably not a good idea to openly say, you know, I'm following a spiritual path now, I'm a Buddhist, I'm doing this and that. We're probably going to attract a lot of negative attention. But of course, if we just tell them that we're trying to become a better person, a more kind person, a more compassionate person, and that by doing a bit of meditation that can help us to do that, then I think people really can't argue with that. So, and then of course, if we want to really help others, then often the best way to do that is to lead by example, rather than trying to convince others that you've got the answer and that they should do what you're doing. Because if you do that, often you lose those people because then they feel like threatened or something. So much better approach is just to lead by example. And then if they see you're becoming a more calm person, a more kind person, a more wise person, then they're more likely to say, well, wow, what are you doing with your life? Maybe something you're doing can be of help to me as well.
What books would you advise for beginners on the path of meditation?
So again, the person who's really my latest influence, my latest teacher is Alan Wallace. And particularly I find that in terms of meditation, there are many types of meditation, of course, and all of them can be very helpful. But I find that generally in the modern world, our attention skills are very poor. We're not very focused, we're distracted, agitated, dull, drowsy. And so a lot of the meditation practices won't work very well because we're so distracted and dull. So what I recommend to most people as a beginning stage is to really work on improving their attention skills, to improving their ability to focus, to single-pointed attention. And in Buddhism, this is often called shamatha practice. And so what I recommend for that, there's a book from Alan Wallace called Attention Revolution, which really describes this in a very clear, methodical way. So this is the book that I often recommend in the beginning stages of meditation practice.
What benefits of daily 10 to 20 minutes of meditation can a person in job or in business see immediately in his life?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think if we're doing this short meditation in the morning, one of the things that's going to be very helpful is doing this sort of mindfulness meditation, just to really calm the mind and focus the mind. Because if we can calm the mind and focus the mind, that's going to set up our day in a good way. If we enter the day with a much more calm and focused mind, then we're more likely to be effective in everything we do and much less agitated in the things we do in daily life.
Many people start meditation but give up after initial few days or months. Their reason is they are not getting enough time. What would be your advice to them?
Yeah, this is something I hear very commonly. You know, often people say, oh, I'd like to meditate, but I simply don't have time. And it's true that most of us in the modern world are very busy. We have very busy lives. That's very common. Many of us work many long hours, family responsibilities, and then we tend to fill up our day with lots of other activities as well. And some of those, for many of us, are essential. Some of us have to work a certain amount to have enough money to have a roof over our head and so forth. And some of us have some family responsibilities as well. But then what we tend to do is we tend to fill up our day with lots of other things, which often don't really bring us much. And often we do that for two reasons. One reason is that often in the modern world, it's felt like if you're not doing something, you're not being productive. So therefore, just do something. And then the other reason that we often fill up our day is that with things is if we're not really doing anything and we're sitting quietly there, it often forces us to look at the state of our mind, which is often a mess. And we don't like to see what is going on in our mind. So we just busy ourselves to distract ourselves. So I think what's very helpful here is to, of course we can forcibly cut things out of our life to have some time to meditate in that. But I think a better approach is just to reflect on our life, to reflect on the fact that we've got a life full of opportunities and that it's not going to last forever and that we really want to make our life as meaningful as possible. And so if we can really reflect on that, because often we don't appreciate something until we've lost it or are about to lose it. So often people don't appreciate this precious life of opportunity that they have until much later in life when they realize that they've wasted their life and then they're full of regret. So if we really reflect on the fact that we've got a life of opportunity and it's not going to last forever, then what you're going to find is a lot of these things that we fill up our day with that don't really bring us much, we're going to lose interest in them. And then we're going to find we're going to have time and energy and space to meditate and to really develop ourselves as a person.
What, according to you, is a meaningful life?
So again, for me, a meaningful life is not so much about what we can get from the world, but what we can bring to the world. And I think whatever station in life we are, whatever our career and so forth, we can always bring a lot to life. And so I think that really serving others is a very meaningful life, because by serving others, I think we really get deep benefit and deep satisfaction in our life and deep meaning in our life.
How do you review your day?
At the end of the day?
Yes.
Then I think it's very helpful to review our day at the end of the day to see how did we go today, and then I think if we notice anything sort of not so good we did during the day, then to really sort of regret having done that and really make a strong determination to let go of that sort of negative behavior. And then equally important, I think, in reviewing our day is to also look at the good things we did during the day and to really acknowledge those good things during the day and really make a strong determination to continue to engage in those good behaviors in future. And in that way, we can really reduce our sort of negative habits and increase our positive habits. So I think that can be something very practical we can do at the end of every day.
What time do you sleep and what time do you wake up?
Personally, I like to go to bed quite early and sort of get up more quite early. I mean, I think it's not so much whether we should, when we get up and when we go to bed, because everyone's different. But I think the key is that we really need to get enough sleep, because unfortunately in our modern society, with our busy lifestyle, we never have enough time for everything. What we tend to do is we tend to cut sleep from 8 to 7 to 6 to 5 to 4 hours. And then somehow we manage to get by with that. But I think that if we really want to meditate and develop ourselves and also to really have a meaningful life, I think we really need to get enough sleep. Because I just saw an article today actually that said that, if we really want to be creative in our life and really produce a lot of good things, then the place where we can really get that is when we have enough rest and sleep. Otherwise, that really sort of interferes with that.
How are the first 3 hours of your morning look like?
Oh, well, that really depends on what's going on in my life. I mean, generally, if I'm not teaching, those first 3 hours I really like to keep to myself and really just like to sort of practice, meditate and reflect on these points. So really not to immediately rush out and do all sorts of different things. But of course, a lot of the time when I'm running a retreat or program, then often from quite early I have to begin teaching. So it really depends on what we're doing in our life. But I really would encourage to give some time and space first thing in the morning, to devote that time to ourselves, to meditation, to reflection and so forth, because that's really where we nourish ourselves, develop ourselves, and then that really provides an excellent basis to then go out in the world.
How did you convert meditation into a habit when you started practicing?
Again, I think the key when we start meditation is, as you mentioned, is the important thing is to begin to develop the habit. And if we try to meditate too long in the beginning, we're just going to give up because it's too difficult. So I would recommend that just start very short, maybe even 10 or 15 minutes. And to begin to develop a habit, I think it's important to pick a time that works for you to meditate and stick to that time. Because if we meditate at the same time each day, then it's going to be easier to develop a habit. Because if we keep changing the time when we meditate, we're not really developing a habit. So pick a time that works and then stick to that time, and then it's going to be much easier to develop a habit.
It is said that meditation practice can improve everything you do. Can you share a few examples? What subtle benefits, especially people working in IT jobs, can see in their lives with meditation?
Yeah. Of course, as I mentioned, this sort of shamatha practice, this mindfulness practice is really helpful to develop a much more calm, clear and focused mind. So I think if we have that as one of our core meditation practices, and then we can sort of bring that into our daily life. So I think if we really want that to permeate our day, we need to also really work on being more and more mindful in our daily life. But then, of course, if we can really enter into our life, in that daily life, in a more mindful state, what we will notice is that our mind is much more calm, more clear, and more focused. And in any profession, also particularly in IT, of course, if you have a very calm, clear, focused mind, then if in your IT job you're trying to solve problems, and often these problems are very technical and subtle, then with that calm, clear mind, you're going to more easily be able to see how to find the solution to the problem. But also sometimes in IT we need to develop things and be very creative and so forth. And that is exactly where creativity comes from, is that creativity comes from that spacious stillness of the mind. And that often the solution or creativity is not coming when we're doing a lot of thinking. And so if we can really enter into that practice and really develop that very calm, clear mind, that's exactly the place where creativity emerges from.
Where can our listeners find the previous retreats you have led or the future retreats you are going to lead?
Well, I have my own website, glensvensson.org. So that's GLENSVENSSON.org, O-R-G. And on that website, I have not only my schedule of upcoming retreats, but also I have links to most of the previous retreats I've done. There are links to either video recording or audio recording. And also, of course, I have a lot of materials on my website as well. So whatever you find on that website, just help yourself.
Thank you so much, Glen, for giving your precious time for this podcast.
Thank you very much.